The year is 1975. Kampala, Uganda's bustling capital, is hosting the Organization of African Unity Summit. Heads of states, diplomats, and journalists from across the continent and beyond are present. The spotlight is on Uganda's flamboyant president, Idi Amin Dada.
To drink and overdrunk, it is not very good. You will not even enjoy more because you will not even have sense. But if you drink very little, you feel very happy, very proud, and you talk to your people. That will be, I'm just advising you.
In the middle of this serious political meeting, Amin does something no leader had ever attempted. He marries. His bride is a teenager, Seya Kyolaba, a former go-go dancer nicknamed Suicide Sarah. The ceremony is extravagant, blending military pomp, African pageantry, and Amin's own theatrical flair. Soldiers march, drums beat, and foreign dignitaries look on, half in disbelief, half in fascination. For Amin, this is no distraction from politics. This is politics. His private life, performed as public theater, his virility, his charm, his authority, all displayed for the cameras. This moment captures the essence of Idi Amin, a leader who ruled not only through violence and fear, but also through spectacle, indulgence, and desire. His life with women was not an aside. It was central to how he projected himself, both home and abroad. To know Idi Amin, we will go into his world of charm and chaos, of wives and of mistresses, a world where personal appetite and political ambition become inseparable. Uganda, newly independent from British colonial rule in 1962, was still a young nation finding its identity. It is a country of immense promise. Fertile land, rich resources, and a strategic location in East Africa gave it potential. Kampala, perched on the northern shores of Lake Victoria, was cosmopolitan, a hub of trade, academia, and politics. Yet, independence had not brought stability. Milton Obote, Uganda's first prime minister and later president, faced ethnic tensions, power struggles, and corruption scandals. His government grew increasingly authoritarian, alienating allies, both domestic and international. The army, inherited from the British, became a decisive force in politics, and within it stood one man whose height, strength, and charisma made him impossible to ignore. Idi Amin's exact birth date remains uncertain. Most sources place it around 1925 in Koboko, a remote town in northwestern Uganda. His early life was modest. His father abandoned the family. He had little formal education, but his physical presence was undeniable. Over 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders and a booming voice, he was a natural soldier. He joined the King's African Rifles, the British colonial regiment, in 1946. At first, he worked as a cook, but soon he was fighting in Somalia and Kenya, suppressing rebellions on behalf of the British. Known for his brutality in the field, he also became popular among fellow soldiers for his humor, storytelling, and athleticism. But behind the image lay a man who would soon reveal his darker tendencies. Paranoia, violence, and repression quickly defined his rule. And alongside this brutality was another defining trait: excess. In 1970s Uganda, polygamy was not unusual. Many men, particularly in rural and traditional communities, had multiple wives. But Amin elevated polygamy into spectacle. His marriages became public events, staged to reinforce his power. By the time he took power, Amin already had several wives, among them K. Amin, Madina Amin, Nora Amin. As President Amin paraded his wives at public functions, dressed them in fine clothes, and used them as symbols of his wealth and dominance. The State House was not just a seat of government, it was a harem, a place where women and politics blurred. For many Ugandans, this was both fascinating and unsettling. On one hand, Amin's flamboyance felt refreshing after the rigid formality of Obote. On the other hand, his indulgence hinted at recklessness, a leader consumed by personal desire. Even the early years of his rule, stories of Amin's affairs circulated widely. Some were whispered in Kampala's elite circles, others appeared in foreign press. According to reports at the time, Amin frequently pursued women outside his marriages. Some accounts claimed he courted beauty queens and dancers. Others suggested he targeted the wives of rivals, a tactic that served both his personal desires and his political dominance. Whispers in Kampala suggested that Amin fathered dozens of children, though the exact number was never confirmed. Later, estimates placed the figure at 30, 40, or even 50. These rumors were not merely gossip, they shaped Amin's image. To some, he embodied virility, the larger-than-life African strongman. To others, he appeared reckless, unable to control his appetite. His charisma, the quality that won him soldiers' loyalty, also drew women. He used his charm deliberately to seduce, to intimidate, and to conquer. Foreign journalists described him as magnetic. He laughed loudly, embraced people warmly, and told outlandish stories. He could be charming one moment and terrifying the next. For women, as for political allies, the unpredictability was both thrilling and dangerous. In Amin's Uganda, politics and desire were inseparable. The dictator's bedroom was as much as a stage as the State House balcony, and the stories that emerged from it revealed a man who saw no boundaries between personal appetite and national destiny. Among all these stories, K. Amin's remains the most haunting. Her death in 1974 still echoes as a mystery unsolved. To Ugandans, it is just a loss of a glamorous figure. It was a symbol of the danger of life with Amin. Her story became a cautionary tale, the dictator who could not control his appetites, and the woman who paid the price. Amin also had a fascination with beauty queens and performers. Uganda in the 1970s had a vibrant social scene, with nightclubs, dance troupes, and pageants. Amin, who loved music and performance, often attended such events. According to reports at the time, women from these circles occasionally became his companions. The most famous example, of course, was Sarah Kyolaba, the dancer who became his fifth wife. But others, less known, were rumors to have entered his orbit for shorter periods. His constant pursuit of new relationships suggested not satisfaction, but an endless hunger, a need to prove himself again and again. By the late 1970s, Amin's personal excesses mirrored the decline of his rule. The same recklessness that marked his private life seeped into his politics. The marriages, mistresses, and rumors became symbols not of virility, but of instability. Soon, Amin would face his greatest challenge, not in the bedroom, but on the battlefield, and his downfall would reveal how closely his private life and public life were intertwined. In 1978, Amin made a reckless decision. His forces invaded Tanzania, seizing the Kagera salient. It was an act of aggression that mirrored his personal recklessness, bold, impulsive, and poorly planned. Tanzania, led by President Julius Nyerere, responded with force. Ugandan exiles joined the Tanzania army, determined to remove Amin. By early 1979, Tanzanian troops marched on Kampala, inside the capital. Fear gripped the population. The man who once paraded wives and mistresses with confidence now fled in panic. The strongman's spectacle had reached its breaking point. In Saudi Arabia, Amin's wife and children adjusted in different ways. Sarah Kyolaba eventually moved to the UK, building a new life far from the shadow of her infamous husband. Other wives and children remained with him in Jeddah, living modestly but comfortably under Saudi protection. For the children, the legacy of Amin's promiscuity was unavoidable. They carried the name of a man remembered both for brutality and excess. In August 2003, Idi Amin died in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. He was in his late 70s, his body weakened by years of illness. There were no parades, no grand ceremonies. His death was quiet, marked only by the headlines of a world that remembered him as one of Africa's most infamous rulers. For those who gossiped in Kampala market about his wife and mistresses, the memories were sharper. The flamboyance, the scandals, the tragedies, all parts of his nation's collective memory of a man who blurred the line between appetite and public duty.